if you don't love to hear the tea, what are you doing? Isaac doesn't. He doesn't like to gossip. But
it's all about the lie. It's not about the...
True,
Right.
so true. So
it's not about the situation.
I think that this story just slaps. Like, it's just a very good story.
I really wanted to talk to you guys, and I really want a quality yap session. I don't know if you're going to provide it to me. You two maybe aren't bringing the yap, but I really just want to know if...
Let's go beyond the first page. Let's go beyond the first page.
Welcome back, Second Pagers. This is Beyond the First Page podcast with siblings Phoebe, Phil, and Isaac. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Phil.
I'm Isaac.
And this is Club Meeting 35, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. As always, before we get started, I just want to remind everybody of two things. The first thing is this is a book club style podcast, and we'll be talking about major plot points and spoilers from throughout Jane Eyre. And so if you don't want to get that classic ruined for you, really recommend that you read the book and then come on and listen to the discussion. And also, if you like this podcast, please follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, wherever you are getting your podcast content. And if you enjoy the podcast, please feel free to give us a 5-star review. And as always, we like to start the podcast off with an icebreaker. And today's icebreaker is our favorite literary teacher, because as you may have known if you've read the book, Jane Eyre is a teacher and a governess. And also she has a few favorite students/teachers in her time as a teacher. So we wanted to do favorite literary teacher as our opener for today's podcast. And I will go first, which is going to be another total cop-out, but I'm going to pick Dumbledore, a true classic. And if he's not your favorite teacher, what are you doing? Isaac, over to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Mies Kilbrin. She's the captain of one of the bone ships in the Tide Child series by R.J. Barker, and she's just an absolute badass.
Yeah, that's really good. So I'm going to go with Sister Apple. She's from a Mark Lawrence series, the Red Sister, the Gray Sister, and then Holy Sister. But she is the nun that teaches assassination, and her method of teaching is constantly trying to assassinate her students. So it's just great. Yeah, she's awesome.
She's a good one. I just read that series. Great series. If you have not read it, definitely check it out. Sister Apple is a really good teacher. Cool. Yeah. So let's get into Jane Eyre. Isaac, could you give us Jane Eyre in 15 seconds?
Yeah, so Jane Eyre is an orphan girl. She grows up with her aunt and cousins, and they really disrespect her and don't like her. She gets sent away to a private school in England where she kind of grows into her own and really finds her personality. She becomes a teacher there, and then after a couple of years gets hired as a governess for this adopted orphan, so she has a little connection there. She ends up falling in love with her boss that runs the house and adopted this little girl that she's governing for. But on the day of their wedding, it turns out that he is still married to this lunatic at the house that she lives in. So she runs away, gets taken in by these siblings who end up to be her cousins. And she discovers this because she inherits her uncle's fortune that they were cut out of because her cousin's parents and this uncle didn't get along. She shares the fortune with them, though, and then her boy cousin says he wants to marry her and go to India with her to become a missionary, and she says, no, I don't want to do that. And she still discovers she loves the original guy that she fell in love with, and she goes back to find him at the end of the book.
Yeah. And I also think, huge portion to mention here is at the end you find out he lost his eyesight in one of his hands, saving his wife, the crazy one he has locked in his attic, from a fire that she then kills herself. So just honestly, I wanted to have, I hate to say this, The Wager was a boys' book. Jane Eyre is speaking to the women, because I wanted
that's what I don't think is true. That's Isaac kept saying that in his TikToks too. I don't know
Disagree.
about.
I mean, I
Maybe
think
I'm tapping into my feminine side.
no, I think it's good to say like this is a book for all people. Everybody loves a goss story. If you don't love to hear the tea, what are you
True.
doing? Isaac doesn't. He
True.
doesn't like to gossip. But this book is like I was telling friends about it and I was like, but then he had his wife locked in his attic and then his cousin
Yeah.
asked her to marry her. Like the drama just keeps going, which I think is one of the reasons that this plot is just it's so good time like over time even though you're in the Victorian area. This was written in the 1800s. It was centered in 1840. It's still relevant because it's just such a the tea is just piping hot from start to finish for me. I think the plot is first and foremost in my mind as like we always talk about, especially when we talk about a classic, like why does this stay a classic? And for me, I think the biggest thing is just the plot, especially from my perspective at least, is just so timeless.
Yeah, I've
But
also felt that way. I think that this story just slaps. Like, it's just a very good story. And I don't think that this was a. Sorry, Isaac, I'm going to sort of steal your thunder here, but it's already been released to the TikTok world. I don't think that this was a love story. So I think if you read it expecting a love story, then yes, it is a disappointing love story. If you read it expecting sort of like, as Phoebe, you were saying, just like a story of gossip and twists and turns, then I think you would have gotten a really good tale. But I don't think it hits as a love story. I think it's way more than that.
yeah, Phil, I mean, I totally agree with you. I think there's obviously an element of romance in this book that's undeniable. However, I think you're getting a lot from it. I think this is a book, you know, written in a time period where women were not allowed to be published, let alone share thoughts about being a repressed sex, essentially. But I think because she wrote it under the guise of being a romance, you get a lot more of those sort of messages across. One of the quotes from when she's in school, she's talking to her friend who doesn't ever lash out at being treated poorly, but Jane really wants to rail against the unfair treatment of the
Helen
students.
Burns.
Yeah. And so she says back to her, when we are struck without a reason, we should strike back again very hard. I am sure we should, so hard as to teach the person who struck us to never do it again. There is themes of women having independence, being able to have their own mind, make their own choices again and again. So I think yes, it's definitely there's a love aspect, but I'm wondering, Isaac, if you picked up on any of those other themes and that made the book and the plot speak to you a little bit more than just maybe a love story would have.
Yeah, so this book was sold to me as a love story, so I was definitely disappointed in that aspect, and I didn't really give it a consideration of anything else. But I liked your Phil. You summed up what I was thinking after what Phoebe said. Like, I like the idea of it as written as like a drama instead of a love story. Um,
But how does that change the how
Because
does it change it
she's
for you?
strikingly unromantic. Like,
yeah,
she's actually aggressively unromantic. Like, everything about their
Unromantic.
relationship is unromantic. Like,
yeah,
he has his wife locked up in the attic.
and
Like,
like the way
what?
they talked, like, I mean, just because I'm thinking of it now as a drama, I don't think I like it anymore. But there were funny parts when they like talk to each other about like, oh yeah, Mr. Rochester, like you're not that handsome, and like I know I'm not very pretty.
Yeah,
Right.
uh,
It was real.
it was.
but
It was real, but
yes,
also like they were so snarky that that was almost
yeah,
unreal.
and that's
Yeah.
what I think I had like. It's not a problem because again, I unfortunately just didn't really connect with this book super well, regardless
Right.
of if it was a love story or not. But she was this timid little child up through it for the first quarter of the book. Then she gets sent to the Lockwood School,
Yeah, the
and
boarding
then all of a
school.
sudden she becomes like a woman's rights feminist, like with
Right.
the snap of your fingers. And I was just like, where did this come from? I feel like
But
Wait, but
she
there
railed
was a
against her
huge
aunt.
point. But that was the huge point. She said you were. It's funny you used the word snapped because I think the word snapped was used where she made that really dramatic scene
With her
that
aunt.
she with her aunt. Yeah, and she said, and at that point, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I snapped at my aunt. She snapped, and she's like, and I haven't gone back. I don't know. I think her whole life was reacting to that childhood of just constantly being put down. And I think that she was just fed up with it. And I think that, like, she took on this stance of aggressive, um, just being so blunt with everything that that was her just way of like not taking shit. And she like realized that she needed to be honest with herself, but then she could be honest with other people.
Yeah, I think the redeeming things about the plot for me, if you're not looking at it from a drama love story perspective, because again, I'm trying to think of things that could really speak to you, Isaac. I think the idea of like having integrity, she that was a huge theme from throughout this book. So like women's rights, being able to kind of rail against the patriarchy a little bit in a pretty subtle way, I think was a huge part of this book. And any like if you're gonna read like a Jane Austen or like any of the Bronte sisters, like you're gonna get that. And these women were revolutionary for their time, in my opinion. I think that's what speaks to this. That also speaks to a big audience. So you have that. You have the theme of integrity, and so when she finds out that he has a wife who's gone insane, she still says like I can't marry you. She holds to her principles. She was a very
Yeah.
religious woman, or pretty religious woman, held to her principles. So I think that's another huge theme that, I'm kind of curious, like, what do you guys think? Would you have married him in her shoes? Would you have gone through with it? Like, are you seeing
No.
both sides of the
Yeah.
dilemma?
Yeah. I think I like that point too. I liked that she didn't do it.
Right.
So many of these other books, like The Women, she would have done it for sure. But in this book, yeah, she stuck to her gut, and she was like, I'd rather just go into poverty and live like a beggar than do this. So yeah,
Then do
I
this.
like that.
Yeah. So you would not have married him then, Isaac?
That's a
I
pretty
think
big
this
red
book-
flag, right? You're about to start a life with somebody.
But I think this book was it was about finding like love and family. I guess at every point in her life, she had this like one person that she could trust. Like when she was in the house, it was the maid Bessie. When she was in the school, it was Helen Burns. When she was the governess, she had sort of him. She had Mr. Rochester. And then after she got out of that situation, she had Mary and Diana, the Rivers sisters. And then she falls into this money and she's like, I just want my cousins. I don't want any of this. This is the happiest moment of my life because I found my family, not because I inherited $20 million or whatever. And I think that
20,000 pounds.
20,000 pounds, yeah. So I just think that was sort of the entire thrust of the novel. Like it was a love story, but it was finding a familial type love, a philia rather than
Do you guys like so I know this was a classic. This was written almost 200 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you like the sentence structure, the
Yes.
flow of it? Because I think that
Love.
is my biggest holdup. Like
That's what you don't like.
I
Even
do
more
not
so
like
than the
the
love
classic.
story.
Yeah. I'm over the love story now. I understand that it's not a love story. Wish I would have known that starting, but I can very easily get over that. But I still I didn't like this book because it is hard to read.
So you don't like Dickens then either?
No, I don't like the classics.
Dude,
Yeah.
I love them. I cackle. Like I think
I thought there were funny parts. There were definitely
Yeah.
funny parts. You're like, this is ridiculous. And these like hoity-toity English people are like sitting here talking like this. This is absurd.
The fact that he
But-
dressed up as that.
As
We'll
the-
get into the red flags of him, but as the gypsy, which also there was like a lot of gypsy slurs that
Yeah.
That
we
was
didn't think about.
a lot
that.
of slurs.
Yeah.
But yeah, the writing to me is, I love it.
Like
Could
I can
not get
appreciate
enough.
it. Like
Would
I
read
can
these books
I
over
can
and
read
over
it
again.
and respect it and be like, this is good writing. There was some quotes. One of my favorite quotes was, I'll read it for you guys, and I think it shows the writing is beautiful. And says, "Sir," I answered, "a wanderer's repose or a sinner's reformation should never depend on a fellow creature. Men and women die, philosophers falter in wisdom, and Christians in goodness. If anyone you know has suffered and erred, let him look higher than his equals for strength to amend and solace to heal. Like, it's obviously beautiful, obviously talented, but 500 pages of that, I
can't.
struggle. I don't like it.
Yeah, no, so I definitely get that. Books like this, I can only read on when I'm exercising, when I'm doing cardio, and I have to focus on the book. I
That is a
can't
straight up
try to
serial killer sentence.
Yeah,
right
that
I
is
can't try to
wild.
shut
I would
up.
say the exact opposite.
Opposite.
Like, I had to read this hard copy to ensure I was paying attention. And
Paying
even
attention.
then, I had to like get through it. I had to listen to it. And when I was working out, I would end my workout and be like, I'm not sure if I caught everything there, but I can't go back.
I fully agree, Isaac. I think that this book is definitely like the language is hard. And what really makes me mad is when people don't acknowledge that and are just like, Dickens isn't bad. It's not like Shakespeare. And it's just like, this is way different than like J.K. Rowling. It's fine. Just acknowledge that it's different.
Yeah.
It's weird
I
when
mean-
people are like, this is super easy. It's pretty convoluted.
Yeah. It
yeah.
gets easier though. I think if you enjoy this and you want to read more, it's like anything, practicing reading this, you get better. I think for me now reading it, it was pretty easy for my mind. I mean, definitely there's words or phrases that my mind just skips. There's like a deadline and then I come back into the story. But I think if you have an interest in it and you keep listening, it does get easier. But I think there's also I agree with you, Phil, like acknowledging that this writing is more challenging to comprehend than a modern day novel for sure. But I think there's also something so unique about it because it is written so differently that makes me enjoy it that much more. If this story had been told in normal telling, I think it would have felt like, a Kristen Hanna novel, and then I would not have enjoyed it as much. So the writing for me elevates the story and the plot even more.
I think a talented author could do a James-esque retelling of this and make an absolute killing.
Well, it's like
Because
Demon Copperhead versus David Copperfield. What, like, exactly on the nose, Isaac, for sure.
Yeah, because like this would be one of those like in that same genre of like, the beach read thriller that if you just had like a very talented writer who tried to get a little bit more deeper than that beach read or that cozy and rewrote this, like, people would go
something good.
Nuts for it. Because you would have the classics people and you'd have the people who just like that kind of junk thriller.
Well, I mean, Demon Copperhead won the Pulitzer, so you're right on for sure.
And James won the National Book. So
yeah.
I do think that
should we
that's actually
copyright this idea before it
should the Phirst Page podcast do a modern day
publishing
of Jane Eyre?
Did we just pretend that we came up with this idea? I think we can copyright it considering it's been done multiple times, as we just noted.
I mean, I would definitely read that, and I would be very interested to see which I liked more, because reading David Copperfield versus Demon Copperhead, enjoyed both. I couldn't pick my favorite between the two. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed Dickens versus the modern day retelling by Barbara Kingsolver for different reasons. Like I said, the writing elevates the story in some aspects, and then you get the modern day plot, I think, which is fabulous. So
yeah, I mean, I think that that's actually so interesting and such a good point that you bring up, Isaac, that like, could this be done in modern, and like, how would it be different? Because I do think it would be different.
Like, maybe she would marry him.
Well, no, I think actually like the drama and the language would have to change with a more modern plot.
Okay, so let's keep with this thought experiment, because I do think it's interesting. So present day, and this gets into characters, and I really wanted to talk to you guys, and I really want a quality yap session. I don't know if you're going to provide it to me. You two maybe aren't bringing the yap, but I really just want to know if today we bring Mr. Rochester to a modern person, is he a red flag, and does she is he able to come full circle? And I think at the end you do feel bad for him and you're happy that Jane ends up with him. But there is certainly a part from like, you know, the first, like when she first meets him till pretty much the end of the book that you are like, do not, this is a red flag, Jane, don't do this. And I'm curious if A, you think that's the case, and then B, if you think modern day, if Jane marries him.
So I didn't keep thinking about Rochester. She seems to
What were
like
you
turn
thinking about?
she turns into this like pretty like spunky young woman
Right.
that then only her two options are her cousin or this old man who is married to a psychopath. Like England's a pretty large country in the 1840 Victorian era. Like a lot of fish in the sea. Like hit the town a little bit. That's what I thought. And then she goes back to Rochester. I'm like, what? Why are we doing this at all?
You think she should not have gone back to him to start with, and modern day, like, definitely no.
I mean, modern day is difficult because he would have just divorced the crazy person.
Wait, so do you think she should have gone back to him? The answer is no.
No.
Okay, and then do you think modern day for sure no, that would never even happen? She would have just married him from the start, or
No, I think she would have left modern day, but I don't think modern day maybe he would be still secretly married to this. Like it just seems implausible now.
Yeah,
I don't think
that's
so.
the
She's
problem.
put her in a
Phoebe,
home.
he doesn't, like, he has her chained in the apartment.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get arrested. Like,
No,
none
no,
of
no.
this can be
Guys.
applied to modern day.
You're failing the yap. In this situation, she would be like in an asylum, or what's the proper
No,
term
here's
now?
the thing. No, let's actually entertain this. This is
Okay.
not the same level of flag. If she's in an asylum, but I don't think that that's the analogy to that time period. Like, I think that if that's the analogy, I don't think that that's as severe as it was in this time period.
Yeah.
I
Like,
mean, you can take
it's
liberties.
something
You
that
can take liberties.
well, let's take the right liberty, because I think that the color of the flag changes.
Okay.
Wife in asylum, locked away. He put her there, won't let her out. The flag is on fire. Yes. Girlfriend that he sort of keeps around, like, that might be more of the modern day. Yes, that's still a red flag, but let's actually make it a little bit more realistic. Because obviously she didn't write this novel and everyone was like, WTF, this would never happen. Which is what would happen if you wrote this novel today. Like, you would never go back to someone who had their wife locked in their apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think maybe you would fall in love with somebody who's
has some skeletons in the closet.
the closet, like,
Yeah, so
maybe
what are
a
the
person.
skeletons?
So I think, well, I still think actually that it would be less of a red flag if your wife was chained in your attic versus you had a person who suffered a mental handicap and now was in a home helping them, and you fell in love with this other person. Like, you can't legally get divorced from this person who has a mental illness potentially, but
Why
you're in
can't
love
you?
with this other person. You're more, I don't know, like I don't know. Maybe legally you are running into issues, or you still feel like an obligation to this person.
Okay,
and you love this other person.
Let's do an immigration situation here. You don't want to divorce her because she would lose her immigration status. So you just say, like, and then, like, on the day
True.
of the wedding,
Okay, good
she comes
idea.
up. Yeah, that's the flag. Okay,
Yeah,
what happens?
good idea.
It's all about the lie. It's not about the
True.
Right.
So true. So
it's not
true,
about the
so
situation.
true.
It's the fact that he never
He
I
wasn't
think
open.
Jane would have, if he had just been like, hey, this woman needs
I
my
got
help.
this
She
lady
went
in my
crazy.
closet.
We're still technically married. But she needs
Also,
my
I have her
support.
locked up.
Yeah. Maybe Jane would entertain that a little bit more, being like, okay, he's truthful. Like, that would fly very differently with me.
Right.
Versus
Yeah.
it is revealed to me at the altar.
Right.
I
I definitely
like
think the
peace.
lie is the crux of the issue for sure,
Yeah,
Isaac.
yeah.
Good in identifying that.
And you can't come back from a lie. Like, all of a sudden they're not
Yeah,
a
you
liar.
can't come back from a lie like that.
Right. Except
True.
if you lose one of your hands and your eyesight because you tried to save her from a fire.
No,
And
but
then
the thing
you were
is, so
still
here's
a
the thing.
liar.
Right. So I guess he was redeeming himself from his cruelty to the woman. He was not redeeming himself from
With
being a
Jane.
liar. Isaac makes a very good point.
true,
Yeah.
but I mean,
So
she still married him at the end
she
then.
did. I mean,
So
she's
she must,
also maybe a sucker. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't
Two
know.
But
fish.
I think, well, but I also think that's what I'm saying. Like modern day, I think women didn't have as many options back then.
Yeah.
Like they were relying on men for a lot of things. And I think modern day that she wouldn't have gone back to him because she would have gotten on a dating app or put herself out there and realized like there's a lot of people who don't have all these red flags that you could certainly be married to and have a happy life with. Okay, well, I think we've established like Mr. Rochester was a red flag. Jane
Yes.
was a
Yeah.
little delulu for getting with him in the end. But I think overall the characters like nothing stand out. I think he was obviously the character to do a deeper analysis on, besides her, obviously. And I think I didn't have anything else unless you guys thought of something else character wise that you want to discuss.
There was a section right after Mrs. Reed dies, or right before Mrs. Reed dies, I think, where Eliza Reed, the cousin that she grew up with, that Jane didn't get along with, all that side of the cousins, goes on this like rampage against her younger sister Georgina, who's like the beautiful, like sought after
Debutante.
socialite. Yeah.
Mhm.
And she's essentially saying like, you're doing nothing with your life, you are just complaining and you're waiting for some guy to give you all this stuff, and you have to like put forth effort and work hard to actually get something worthwhile to make your life meaningful. So
Mhm.
I liked that part of a character, and I feel like that helped redeem the Reed side of the family slightly for me.
Wait, how so? Can you expand on that a little bit, Isaac? 'Cause I'm not really. That was just her yelling at her sister,
Yeah, because her sister would lay around, like her mom is there dying, and the sister would like
right?
lay around and complain about
Right.
how awful her life was because she was back at this house and not on the main continent dating or
Hmm.
whatever. Um,
Right.
and the older sister, who doesn't really get along with Jane, kind of has
Hmm.
this, snap moment that is very similar to Jane's idea of justice and rights, or, standing up for yourself, and goes off
Hmm.
on this girl. Um,
Yeah.
so I thought that was kind of like, okay, Jane is rubbing off and affecting people around her in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really catch that. That's interesting. I thought the reads were pretty abysmal in general as character. Like they just really sucked. But
Yeah.
good point
It
about
was like a
that
very
redeeming
Cinderella in the stepmother
moment.
and stepsister
Yeah.
vibes.
Vibes.
Were the
Yes.
Reeds black? That
No.
seems crazy.
I don't think so. I think they
But
were. Yeah. It
they
did say they were darker. I think they
and they
just
she
like went into
references like their
England.
race. I couldn't I wish I
Specifically.
wrote it
I
down.
don't think there's in the 1800s. I don't think any prominent family
Yeah.
would have
I didn't
been.
think so either, but I was like, that would be a
Yeah.
wild twist to this story.
Yeah.
That you just like don't get as a modern reader.
Yeah.
That's like a
Yeah.
Bridgerton take.
Yeah.
What about you,
Um,
Phil?
I actually loved. I did really like Helen in that like childhood friendship that
Yeah,
she
for
had at the
sure.
Lockwood. I liked the evil teachers, the evil headmaster. I think that those characters were really good in just like stirring this rebellious side of Jane. I guess Isaac had a trouble with this implausibility of her being so straightforward and
Right.
like brute
So
force, but
tame.
I do
Yeah.
think that like given these people that are just so awful, I think that that would actually be much more realistic. I thought it was interesting that her uncle was like fleeced all the cousins out of the money and then gave it to Jane. Like
Who
I
he'd
just,
never met.
Yeah.
yeah, like it was just so like aggressive. I guess that point is funny because you can try to be so spiteful and horrible as a person, and they still got the money. Like it
Yeah.
just like look at that guys, all that guys endeavoring like didn't didn't do anything, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed the book, as you guys can tell. I think plot, characters, and writing were all there for me. I'm going to read more by Charlotte Brontë. I appreciate you guys reading this book for the book club because it was something I really enjoyed. And it actually invigorated me. I know Anna Karenina is a Russian literature, but I'm going to try to read that again because I think I would like it. Very different vibes, but still the drama is there. So it was a 5 for me. And it was probably one of my most favorite books we've read for the book club so far. Phil, what about you?
Yeah, it was a 5 for me as well. I think that I enjoyed it much more than I enjoyed even Pride and Prejudice
Hmm.
or Madame Bovary. Of those times, I thought it did stand out just because it was
Yeah.
so convoluted.
Yeah, there was a few extra twists in there.
Yeah.
Isaac, what about you?
So 2 for me. I think I've said what I need to say. Just the classics writing style just was difficult to consume.
Right.
I have enjoyed the conversation with it. I think you guys knocked down a lot of like negatives that I probably would have said before, but at the end of the day, it's
It's what
how
you
did
took
I
away from
feel
it.
like reading this book, and I didn't
Not
feel
good.
like I liked it. Yeah.
It's as simple as that sometimes. I think it's already been said, but I'll say I think if you enjoyed Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë, I mean it's a pretty easy jump for a lot of readers to make, but I would say Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, obviously. And then I also enjoyed David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And I think that's pretty apt considering the conversation we just had. Hopefully there will be a modern day adaptation of Jane Eyre. So, Phil, what about you?
Yeah, mine is another easy jump just to her sister's Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights gets a lot of hate. I don't think it deserves any of that hate. Also, I would say it's basically a little this with a touch of magical realism, and then you got Wuthering Heights. So
Cool.
I like it.
Love that. I'll have to read it. Isaac, what about you?
I said The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. We read it in season 1 for the podcast. Written in, I can't remember when it was written, but it's a modern language. But the main character is very witty, like I think kind of Jane was.
Yeah.
So very similar vibes from the wit perspective.
And a bit of drama too. It was written in the
Yeah, with like the
1960s.
twists and the
hmm
yeah.
It was set in the 1960s, I should say. But yeah, a lot of like twists and some good drama there. Cool. Well, great discussion, you guys. I am excited to tell the readers what we are reading next time. Isaac, would you give us a summary of Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jesse Sutano?
Yep. Vera is a widowed tea shop owner in San Francisco's Chinatown, one of my favorite places. And she finds a dead man in her shop. Believing the police are incompetent, she takes it upon herself to solve the murder, befriending and meddling in the lives of her 4 suspects.
Yeah, this is a good one. I've already read it. I'm excited to chat with you guys about it. Very lighthearted for any of our listeners out there who are looking for a cute, cozy murder mystery. This is the book for you, and I will be excited to talk with you guys next time about it. Until then, this is a reminder to call your siblings, tell them that you love them, tell them about a good book. Maybe it's the classic Jane Eyre. And until we talk again, stay classy, second pagers. We'll see you later.
See you guys.
Bye,
Let's
guys.
go beyond